Hello and welcome back to Learn the Bible in a Year for January 12th, 2026. And today we read through Genesis chapter 25, Genesis chapter 26. We also took a look at Matthew chapter 10, verses 1 through 31. And we read in Proverbs chapter 1, verses 20 through 23. So let's jump right into today's recap. All right, now starting in Genesis chapter 25, Abraham remarries after Sarah's death. Of course, Abraham is only 137 years old, so why not remarry? His new wife's name is Keturah, and she has several sons. And Abraham gives them gifts and sends them east, so Isaac remains his primary heir. Then Abraham dies at the age of 175, and Isaac and Ishmael bury him beside Sarah in the cave that he purchased in the last chapter. Now, Isaac is living near Bir Leah Roi, which I certainly pronounced correctly, the well where Hagar encountered God. Rebekah is barren, unfortunately, so Isaac prays and God answers. She gets pregnant, but the babies are struggling inside her. She asks God what's happening. God tells her two nations are in her womb. One will be stronger, the older will serve the younger. And this, of course, is the opposite of the cultural norm where the firstborn tends to get everything. The first baby comes out red and hairy. They name him Esau. The second baby comes out gripping Esau's heel. They name him Jacob, which means heel grabber or supplanter. Neither name are super great. And Isaac is 60 when they are born, which sounds kind of old, but it's way younger than his dad was when he had his first child. The boys grow up completely different. Esau becomes a skillful hunter, a real outdoorsman. And Jacob is more quiet. He stays among the tents. Isaac loves Esau because he brings him wild game. And Rebekah loves Jacob. Already there's favoritism splitting the family. One day, Jacob is cooking a stew when Esau comes in from the field exhausted and starving. He asks for some of that red stew, so famished that he can barely even think straight. Jacob here sees an opportunity and says, "First, sell me your birthright." The birthright means Esau gets a double portion of inheritance and becomes the family leader. Esau says, "What good is a birthright if I'm going to die anyway?" He swears an oath and then sells it. Now, this whole situation to me is ridiculous. Now, I've experienced in my life massive hunger. I grew up wrestling where cutting weight and not eating is kind of part of that sport. I've also fasted for 18 days, and I've never in my life ever felt hungry or famished enough to be willing to sell my birthright. So Esau here must be experiencing something extraordinary to be willing to sell his birthright. But alas, he does. So Esau eats and he gets up and he leaves. The text says Esau despised his birthright. He traded his future for instant gratification. It's a terrible deal, and that's probably going to haunt him. Well, let's find out. Now, moving on to Genesis 26. There is a famine, and Isaac moves towards Egypt. Remember what I said a couple episodes ago? Egypt is where you go during a famine. But God appears and tells him to stay in Gerar. God renews the covenant promise. Through Isaac's offspring, all nations will be blessed. It's the same covenant he made with Abraham. Isaac pulls the same move his father did twice. He tells everyone that Rebekah is his sister because she's beautiful, and he's afraid that they will kill him and take her. Like, come on, people. Why are you saying that your wife is your sister? It's the same trick your father pulled. It didn't work any of the times. Like father, like son, I guess. Now, after Isaac says that Rebekah is his sister, the person to figure out that they were lying was actually King Abimelech. He sees Isaac caressing Rebekah and realizes that she is his wife. Now, does that name sound familiar to you at all? Well, it should. King Abimelech was the same king who was in the middle of the controversy between Sarah and Abraham when Abraham did this exact same thing. Now, it's possible this King Abimelech is the exact same guy. It's also possible that this is the son of King Abimelech. We don't really know, but in my hearts of hearts, I hope this is the same guy because that would just be funny, and I like it when the Bible's funny. So, anyways, King Abimelech confronts Isaac and says someone could have slept with her and brought guilt on everyone, and he orders Isaac to leave them alone. Isaac then plants crops and reaps 100-fold harvest that year. He becomes wealthy, flocks, herds, servants, and a partridge in a pear tree. The Philistines get jealous and they fill in all his father's wells with dirt. Abimelech asks Isaac to leave because he's become too powerful. Now, Isaac then moves to the valley and reopens his father's well. Every time his servants dig a well, the herdsmen of Gerar quarrel over it, claiming it is theirs. This back and forth quarreling goes on for quite a while, but Isaac eventually settles the quarreling by creating another well. Abimelech comes with his advisors to try to make a treaty with Isaac. He says that God is clearly with Isaac, so he'd like Isaac to make an oath. They feast together and they make peace. All right, now jumping into Matthew chapter 10, and we read verses 1 through 31, Jesus calls his 12 disciples and gives them authority to drive out evil spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. He lists their names: Simon Peter, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who will betray him. Jesus then sends out his disciples with specific instructions. Go to the lost sheep of Israel, not to the Gentiles or the Samaritans yet. Preach that the kingdom of heaven is near. You must heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, drive out demons. Freely you have received, so now freely give. Don't take money or extra clothes. The worker deserves their keep. When you enter a town, find a worthy household and stay there. If anyone doesn't welcome you or listen, shake the dust off your feet when you leave. It'll be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on Judgment Day than for that town. Now, I've always wondered this idea of shaking your feet when you leave a town, what that actually means. This was actually an ancient Jewish cultural statement. And the rationale behind this is that if you were walking to Jerusalem, for example, Jerusalem is where the temple was, so that was holy ground. So if you're walking from a Gentile town to Jerusalem, you would first shake the dust off your feet so that you would not take unholy ground onto holy ground. So when Jesus is sending his disciples to these Israelite towns, if they shook the dust off of their feet before they left that town, essentially they're saying that you are a Gentile town. This is unholy ground because you are not accepting the ministry of Jesus. So that's where that comes from. And Jesus warns them, I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. Be shrewd as snakes and innocent as doves. People will hand you over to councils, flog you in synagogues, drag you before governors and kings. When arrested, don't worry about what you're going to say. The Spirit will speak through you. Brother will betray brother to death. Parents will betray their children. Children will rebel against their parents. Everyone will hate you because of Jesus, but whoever stands firm to the end will be saved. When you are persecuted in one place, just flee to another. Students aren't above their teacher. If they called Jesus Beelzebul, they will call his followers worse. But don't be afraid. What's hidden will be revealed. What Jesus tells them in the dark, speak in daylight. What's whispered, proclaim from rooftops. That's the message from Jesus. All right, now jumping into Proverbs chapter 1, and we're reading 20 through 33 as for the verses. Wisdom is personified here as a woman crying out in the streets, in the city squares, at the city gates. She's not hiding, she's in public, loud, and accessible, but people ignore her. She asks how long simple people will love being simple. Mockers delight in mockery, the fools hate knowledge. She invites them to respond to her rebuke. She'll pour out her heart and make her thoughts known. But there's a problem. She called and they refused. She stretched out her hand and no one paid attention. As a matter of fact, they ignored all of her advice and they would not accept her rebuke. So when disaster comes, the calamity sweeps over them like a storm. She'll laugh at their disaster and mock when terror strikes. Remember, this is not a real person who's mocking at their disaster. This is wisdom. This is they are not receiving wisdom. So they call on her, but she doesn't answer. They'll search but won't find her because they hated knowledge and didn't choose to fear the Lord. They wouldn't accept her advice, so they'll eat the fruit of their ways and be filled with the fruit of their schemes. So the whole point in this part of the chapter in Proverbs is that wisdom is from fearing the Lord. They talked about that at the beginning of this chapter in Proverbs. And now this lady is personifying what it actually looks like to ignore wisdom. All right, that's the end of the recap for today. We're going to jump into our sponsor. Today's sponsor is Covenant Security Equipment. Covenant Security Equipment is a Christian owned company that is partnered with building contractors who build with safety in mind. They sell bullet resistant windows, secure transaction systems, and drive through installations, as well as much more. Covenant Security Equipment delivers commercial grade security solutions with fast turnarounds. If this sounds interesting to you or you work in that field, go to covenantsecurityequipment.com. You can also find that website in the show notes. All right, we're going to jump over to the questions for today. If you want to know where you can find these questions, all of the questions throughout the entire year is in the Learn the Bible in a Year workbook. The digital version of this workbook you can find in the show notes. That is 100% free to you. There is also the paperback version of this workbook. That's what I like to work out of. The link to that is also in the show notes, so make sure that you pick up one of those. And even if you don't want the paperback book for yourself, this does make a good gift to give somebody who's looking to build their relationship with the Lord just a little bit more in 2026. All right, question number 1, and this is from what we read in Genesis. Esau traded his birthright for a single meal, prioritizing immediate satisfaction over a long-term blessing. So here's the question. What temporary pleasure are you choosing that might cost you something far more valuable? Where are we being short-sighted? All right, question number 2 is from what we read in Matthew chapter 10. Jesus told his disciples not to fear those who can kill the body. So here's the question. What fear of people is preventing you from boldly following Jesus? And question number 3 is from Proverbs 1. Wisdom calls out in the streets, but many ignore her voice. So here's the question. Where is wisdom calling you to that you are resisting or avoiding? Some deeper questions for today. And the fourth and final question, which is the same question as we have every day, and that is, what is your main takeaway from today's reading? My main takeaway is the whole dynamic in the relationships between Isaac and Rebekah, as well as their children, Jacob and Esau. It's totally and 100% dysfunctional. The text even says that Isaac loved Esau and Rebekah loved Jacob more. I mean, that's totally a dysfunctional family. So here's the point that I can take away from that. Just because people are evil, just because people are bad, does not mean that God is bad. Certainly, Isaac and Rebekah are not acting correctly as parents here, but God is still faithful to fulfill his promises, even though we as people mess up all the time. Just like Isaac and Rebekah are messing up here, so we also mess up in our lives all the time, but the Lord is faithful to fulfill his work in us. I am very grateful for that. All right, well, that finishes up our recap for today, and I will see you all again tomorrow.